Sorry, folks, just did my whole intro and was muted. Welcome to the Marshfield School Committee meeting on Tuesday, March 16th, 2021. Ms. Pazurski, if you could please call the roll.
Mrs. Campbell?
Here.
Mr. Greer?
Here.
Mr. Costello?
Here.
Ms. Boyd?
Here.
Ms. Brake?
Here.
Could you please rise? Join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, folks, we have just two items on our agenda tonight. I'll turn to Mr. Granatino for his advice on which item you think we should take first. I'm thinking the proposal for the in-person instruction.
I would say that probably
Yep.
the best one to take, sir, yes.
Okay. I'm just going to ask that the committee be mindful, since we're all sitting in the same room and in somewhat close quarters, socially distanced, of course, but please be mindful of the fact that you need to mute yourself so you're not echoing when somebody's talking. I'll try and be mindful of the same. So when you are recognized to speak, turn your mic on, and everybody else's mic should be off, and then we'll just do it that way to make sure that we don't confuse those watching at home. So we will start right away, and we can move informational to the end of the meeting once more. And here's how I would like to run this portion of the meeting, somewhat similar to what we did last week. We will hear an update from Mr. Granatino on the motion that was made last week to have all the logistics sorted out.
You want to do public comment first, though? Typically, that would be before we get into the...
I was going to flip it.
Okay, gotcha.
So I'm going to have Mr. Granatino give that presentation just to answer any questions that may come up, to give us an update of where we're at logistically. Then I'm going to recognize the portion of public comment. Going to allow people the chance to address the committee. Laura Brait, our secretary of the school committee, will once again be timing those, and has administrative rights to the Zoom. So if people go over their allotted time of 1 minute and 20 seconds, which we set for the last meeting and will be consistent with this one, you'll be allowed to finish your sentence, and then we will ask you to wrap up, because we do have well over 100 people on this Zoom. So we'll be doing that. After that, I will turn it on back over to Mr. Granatino. I'll turn it on over to the members of the committee for their questions and their comments. I'll give it back to Mr. Granatino for anything else he'd like to add, and then we can see where we take it from there. So that will be the way this operates. Mr. Granatino, I'll go ahead and recognize you for your presentation.
I'm unmuted. Everyone hear me okay? Okay, great. Well, as you know, at the last meeting, there were two motions made at the end of the meeting. One asked for us to start working with the union, with the MEA, on negotiating reopening and the impact that reopening would have on the contract. And we have done so. We have met with the union now twice, last Thursday and then yesterday. The other motion that was made was to ask me to make sure that our teams at both the high school and the middle school were doing the tasks that were needed to make sure that we would be ready to open as soon as possible for our schools at both the middle school and the high school. And I think when we talked last week about the opening and the reopening it to fully in person, we were looking at spacing in the instructional classrooms. We were looking at logistics of transportation. We were looking at logistics of food, feeding them, in logistics of movement around the building. So I think those areas are ones that have been being worked on for a while, but obviously in the last week, since we met last Tuesday, I've been keeping in close tabs with Mr. Kuther and Ms. Kemet and their teams, and looking at the big logistical issues. Classroom furniture at each of the buildings has been set up in the rooms, maybe not in their final location just yet, but they're in the rooms, or some of them are being staged in various parts of the building. So when the committee does move forward with a vote on a date for us to return, then the final stages will take place for that furniture. But all of the furniture, from what I can gather, has been moved either into the classrooms or into the buildings. So there'll be a quicker transition. Rooms that have been identified that may not meet the 3 to 6 foot distancing based on the student enrollment, but either at the high school or at the middle school have been identified. Alternative spaces have been found, and they will be, whether it's another classroom that's bigger, whether it's using the auditorium or the cafeteria or the gymnasium, those things have been worked on and identified, and we'll continue to tweak it between now and whenever it's determined that we're going to be coming back. Transportation has been coordinated with Topman Enterprises. Tom has been on the phone with them and working with both Maureen and Bob Kuther, Principal Kuther and Principal Kemet, on the impact bringing both cohorts together would have on transportation. The high school, as we've said previously, will not have a major impact. There'll be additional ridership, but their ridership was so low that we're not looking at any new routes or changes to the existing routes that students are on. The middle school, there may be a couple tweaks, not many, but those are being worked on as we speak. The ridership is not really going to be adjusted too much because we're, based on DESI standards that came out now about a month ago, allow for us to double up on the buses, and students will be able to ride in a different format than they did before. So again, there may be a few routes. I just found out this morning, a few routes that may have to be tweaked, but between now and whenever we open, that will be addressed. The bigger part, not as much at the high school, but at the middle school, the pickup and drop-offs are an area that obviously are going to be impacted with. Sorry about that. I muted myself by mistake. I was just mentioning that drop-off and pickups at the middle school are going to be adjusted, and Principal Kemet and her team have been working with Marshfield Police in identifying not only the one side that they've been using by the cafeteria, but the other side by the gym entrance as potential drop-off and pickup areas to alleviate the congestion in one fell swoop on the cafeteria side. So they're confident that that will be in place for when we are ready to open. The snack protocols, we talked about that without lunch. Again, the big part of this proposal is to, because we're concerned about the amount of lunches that we would have to keep the 6 foot distancing for dining, or using alternative spaces that would then preclude them from being used as classrooms, whether it's the gym, whether it's the auditorium. We've proposed to have a shortened day, but it's being shortened by the fact that there won't be lunch built in, and lunch will be provided to anybody and everybody who wants it at the end of the day as they're heading out, but snacks will also be allowed during the school day, obviously keeping 6 foot distancing. There'll be a little bit more structured as it stands right now at the middle school, in the sense that they're going to be using not only when they take mass breaks, especially if they're outside, snacks will be allowed, but there'll be some structured snack time in the cafeteria, which again will not be being used. They can't do it every period though, because there will be periods where the caf is used as a classroom. The high school will be kind of following a bit more of an informal process, but students will be allowed throughout the day to have snacks outside of the classroom. And Principal Kuther has informed me that it will be similar to what they've been doing throughout the year so far on mass breaks, and that they haven't had scheduled mass breaks at the high school where a group goes out down the hall or outside. But if people have to leave to go out and take a mass break, they've been able to do so. That would continue with snacks as well. And obviously we'll be monitoring that. And if that has to be tweaked at all, we can do that. There was discussion about, in the halls and in utilizing restrooms to make sure that we're not, overtaxing those areas with larger number of students than we want to see in a confined area. And one of the things that we've been able to use this year that started at the beginning of the year was the e-hall pass, which allows the teachers and the administration to know how many kids are out in the hallway at one time, and they can kind of gauge if there's too many folks out, then they can hold off on having people leave the classroom. And they feel both confident at the middle school and the high school that will be a way to make sure that we're not having overcrowded situations in our restrooms and in the hallways during class. And I think those are the big ones. I mean, there was schedule changes. I mean, classes aren't really changing. Some of the locations may be changing, so Aspen has to be updated, and a lot of those things are being put in place as we speak. At the middle school, you had almost 2 schedules within the initial schedule, one for one cohort, one for the other, and they'll be moving to one overall schedule, but it's the same as it is now. And those kids that were home when their fellow cohortees were in class, they're going to be melded together in a new schedule, and that schedule is being worked on by the administrators at the middle school in conjunction with representatives from Aspen, and that will be ready to, they don't really make that change until the day before school. It's kind of like the first day of school when the schedule kicks in, and they'll be doing that, but they feel confident that at whatever time the committee desires us to come back to full in person, they'll be able to have that ready. So, and I think those are the big areas that needed to be worked on throughout the week. In fact, and you know, our administrators feel confident. I've been in contact with them in the buildings a lot over the last week to make sure that these are addressed, and if there are areas of concern, that we take care of them.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Granatino. Much appreciated with that update. Like I said, I'm going to turn it on over now for public comment. Here's the way public comment will work. Again, folks, you will have 1 minute and 20 seconds. If you would like to speak in public comment, you need to utilize the raise hand feature on Zoom. So you can do that by, if you are on the desktop, you would go down and click reactions, and there would be an option to raise hand. So if you are interested in speaking in public comment and addressing the committee, it does have to pertain to the agenda tonight, which I'm sure it would. Again, you'd have 1 minute and 20 seconds. I would just need you to start with your name and the street that you live on. So I'm going to start now. I'm going to ask you to be unmuted, and once you are unmuted, you can begin, and Ms. Brate will be timing you. So I'm going to start with Elizabeth Burns.
Hello, this is her daughter, Megan Burns.
Oh, Megan, awesome. Go right ahead.
Hello, I am the senior class president at MHS, and I strongly believe that we should go back full-time as soon as possible. Personally, I believe that a majority of students who are against this idea are unjustified. We live in a world where all we wish for right now is to go back to normal. Going back to school 5 days a week is a big step in that direction. That's all we knew 12 months ago. We are getting a little too comfortable at home. I understand where students are coming from when they make the argument that there have been too many changes and that we need consistency, but we live in a society where we're supposed to be in school 5 days a week. We should be able to get acclimated back to school quite quickly. I don't mean to speak for everyone, but I am fairly confident in saying it has been impossible to learn from a computer screen. There's no doubt in my mind that we are not mastering all of the material that we should be. And school is a place where you learn a great deal of very important life lessons that don't take place in the classroom. Whether you're in middle school, missing out on a dance, school trip, and at this high school we've missed prom, senior night out, homecoming, playoff games, theater performances, and all the little things that we all remember, like catching up with friends in the parking lot after school. So although some may only consider academics when we think about school, it's the other stuff that actually get us there. I mean, I haven't heard too much laughter on a Zoom call. Finally, we are in high school. If you tell us to be there on Monday, we will be there. And speaking as a senior, going back full time would give us the closest thing putting closure on our 12th year that we have been missing since last March. Thank you.
Megan, thank you very much. We appreciate that. Very well stated. Clearly, you have earned your role as class president. So we appreciate that, Megan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, I would invite folks who wish to speak in public comment to use the raise hand feature. I am going to recognize next Sally Marples. I know Mrs. Marples, as the president of the union, does have something she'd like to address to the committee. So Sally, I'm going to unmute you now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Costello. I'm Sarah Marples. I'd say my address is the Marshfield High School Library, but I actually live in Duxbury. Ever since the beginning of this pandemic, almost exactly a year ago, we, meaning the administration, the school committee, and the association, have worked very hard and collaboratively to make sure we can provide the best education for our students. We have had our bumps, but on the whole, I think we have made it work. We were thrilled and grateful that the town of Marshfield, with, I'm sure, the cooperation of Mr. Granatino and our school committee, was so proactive in making vaccinations available for the staff of the schools in the area, including us. And we want to please thank Mr. Maresco, the EMTs, the firefighters, and all those people who've made that possible. That being said, Please don't blow it now. Despite our strong desire to be back in the classroom, we are startled that the school committee is looking at dates before our staff has even had a chance to complete their vaccination regime. In fact, before they even have had a chance to get their second shot. It makes no logical or moral sense. And it is in no one's best interest, not our staff, not our students, and therefore indirectly not their parents. Getting our staff vaccinated is not a universal panacea. What it will do, however, is allow our teachers and staff to remain in school even if they have contact with a student who is COVID positive. This will reduce disrupting our students' learning since teachers won't be forced to either Zoom from home or have a substitute teacher for 2 weeks. Remember, at the middle and high school level, a teacher's absence impacts 80 to 100 students every day. There is no logical reason for us to assume that there will be no increase in staff quarantining or isolation as we bring all the students back. We are already struggling with filling posts when people are out. For the want of a week or two, do we need to take that chance for our students? There are also some real safety concerns. The doctor's letter that you shared said students are safer in school, no mention of staff, but it's stated some explicit protective steps that districts should take in order to make that true. While Marshfield has met those benchmarks in many areas, there's some major areas where we have not. We do not do pre-screening prior to school entry. We will not be potting our older students. We have not launched our pool, our vaccination, our testing pool yet. All of those are major pieces that they mentioned in their recommendation for opening the schools. We need time to institute pool testing that Marshfield has been approved for. Again, it will not be a cure-all, but it will be another tool to try to make this return to fully in-person a success, especially for our students. Academically, the timing of this return before sometime in April is ill-conceived. The term ends on April 1st. Bringing students back prior to that date is counterproductive. They should be concentrating on learning and finishing up for the term, not getting readjusted to being in a school full-time with all their peers. We will make this newest transition work the way we have made every transition work, but why make it even harder for our children? If you start prior to April, the short time given to make this transition will make it difficult to make it smoothly. It is not just our classroom teachers who will be impacted, but our nurses, our student support staff, our administrators, our food services, our transportation services, and all the other ancillary services that make our schools run. I will not go into details about the false equivalency with our elementary schools being back. They're at 6 feet, we're going to be at 3 feet. They are potted, we are not. It is more challenging with the larger numbers to have safe mask and snack breaks. And the later we go into spring, the better chance we have of good weather and using our outside for safe distancing. The other thing is you have to realize every student that comes back is also going to be in contact with 60 to 80 peers. The better shot we have of doing it safely, the better it's going to be for their education. We know how hard it has been for our students and parents. Our faculty and staff face the same challenges with childcare and being there and having our kids concentrate and learning online. We have to remember we have been teaching our students live throughout this. Not always in person, but we've been there for them. We want to be there for them fully live in class. We are gratified that Marshfield was ahead of everyone in advocating and providing vaccinations for school employees. We are happy that we have been part of the team that has made this work. We truly do not understand this precipitous return to fully in person when a week or two will make it so much easier. We have done so many right things together. As I said, please don't blow it now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sally. Just as a note to folks who may be watching at home, I always try and stick to the minute and 20-second public comment period, but as Sally is the president of the Marshfield Education Association, I do like to give her the time that she feels necessary to address the committee when she speaks in public comment. Next, I see Ben Raymond. Ben, I'm going to go ahead and ask you to be unmuted.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. So I respectfully ask for 10 seconds of leeway so I can also properly thank Mr. Granatino, Mr. Maresco, and the entire school committee for your efforts to fully vaccinate staff, especially to those who were willing to spend long hours assisting those efforts at the fairgrounds. We saw you. It has not gone unnoticed and sincerely appreciated. Despite being a teacher at Marshfield High School, I'm speaking for myself tonight as a parent, taxpayer, and registered voter in town. Before anyone listening immediately dismisses me because I pay union dues, let me say that selfishly, I want my students back to school yesterday. I genuinely love teaching the kids of this town. I want them back in my classroom. Selfishly, if they came back tomorrow, I would be happy. However, I firmly believe that we must wait until April 5th at the latest. I believe that the vast majority of the school committee clearly cares enough about the health of the people who educate their children to make decisions that do not thoughtlessly put those people at unnecessary risk. And that is why I appeal to each committee member to not vote to send secondary school staff back to full live instruction before Monday, April 5th, which is the first school day after all secondary staff members will have the opportunity to receive the second dose of the COVID vaccine that you have all helped to provide. I have an 11-year-old stepdaughter of Governor Winslow, who I love beyond any possible comprehension. And I have learned to sympathize with the natural parental impulse to care about absolutely nothing else in the world but what is best for her, which is, of course, for her to be in school 5 days a week. But with that said, any decision made by the school committee tonight to send secondary students back to fully live instruction before April 5th would be callous, adversarial to staff, and completely unnecessary. Our kids waiting 1 more week, 4 more school days, missing 2 more live classes is a very, very small price to pay so that you can all send a clear message to them that while you will always care most about their well-being, you also possess a functional compassion for their teachers. Thank you again for your efforts with the vaccinations. They are noticed, they are appreciated, and for your careful attention to my concerns in your deliberations tonight.
Thank you very much, Ben. Much appreciated. This is the last call for public comment. If anybody chooses to raise their hand, you'd be recognized. Okay. Seeing none, I'm going to go ahead now and turn it on back over to Mr. Granatino, if you have anything to add. I know we don't directly address comments, but if there's anything you feel needs to be added to your presentation.
No.
No? Okay. I'll go ahead now and turn it on over to the members of the committee. I can start with Ms. Campbell, if that's okay, moving from this way all the way down to Ms. Brate, if that works. Ms. Campbell, you're recognized.
Can you hear me? Okay. Sorry, everyone. I have technical issues with my earphones when they're plugged in. You can't hear what I'm saying. I wasn't prepared to go first, but I guess I will. Thank you to everyone that shared their thoughts and opinions in public comment, particularly Ms. Burns. I always appreciate, and I know the committee appreciates hearing directly from students. That being said, I guess I have a couple of comments and then a couple of questions for Mr. Granatino. I will say for myself that I tend to agree with a few of the speakers earlier today that April 5th to me has always felt to be a natural transition time to have our students return to school. It might be because I look at it through the lens of a teaching career. I'm not sure, but to me, heading back prior to the term ending does feel disruptive to our students. It feels disruptive to our staff. And not something that I'm necessarily in favor of doing. And also, again, what speakers have mentioned before, it is going to be potentially, having our teachers come back April 5th. Any teachers that wanted to be vaccinated will have that already done, giving them peace of mind and allowing them to truly focus on their students in front of them and getting everyone off to a successful start. I do, of course, as everyone, believe wholeheartedly our students need to be back in school. I think it's a matter of trying to come to an agreement as to what the best day is for that. I do have a couple of questions, Mr. Granatino. Do we know, in terms of staffing concerns, like if a teacher is out, what do we have in terms of substitutes, and what does that situation kind of look like for us at the middle and high school levels?
It's been a challenge all year, even in the cohort sessions, but we've been able to get by. We've had folks, if we don't have subs who can come in, day-to-day subs, we have building subs, but if they're all being used, we have had teachers who will cover a class during their prep period. We have aides or paras or ESPs or tutors who have done the same. And so, we can't foresee how many may be out. I mean, if a teacher's been out this year due to quarantining where they're healthy, but they just by DPH protocols have to be home, they have been zooming into class and running the class. Even if students are in the classroom here and they're teaching from home, we put a para in the class and the teachers be able to teach from there.
And what happens, to clarify, so for teachers that go and have chosen to get vaccinated, I think Ms. Marples alluded to this, but I want to hear from you what the protocol will be. So if a teacher is vaccinated, a student in their class tests positive for COVID, what then does that teacher have to do? They no longer have to quarantine if they've received the vaccine, or?
I asked this question today to our nurse director, Ms. Landry, who's on top of all DPH protocols. So from what DPH has shared with us, and I'm pretty sure these are the protocols across the state, that once someone has had their second shot, if they're in a 2-shot trial, whether Moderna or Pfizer, after the second shot, 2 weeks after that second shot occurs, DPH says that even if there is a positive case that they're a close contact of, they do not have to quarantine at that time. So I'm not a doctor, but that's what I was informed of by our nurse leader today. Right.
That's all the questions that I have. But
Okay.
Sorry. That's all the questions that I have. But just again, thank you for the people that spoke in public comment, and a big thank you to our teachers. We all hear you, and we all appreciate how much you have pivoted and just gone above and beyond this year. So.
Thank you very much. Ms. Campbell, go ahead and recognize you, Mr. Greer.
Okay. Yeah, I'll keep mine short. I just have one quick question. Given that everything that you've said has been done, what's the earliest possible date that we could get back in school?
I would say with the work that's been done, and while there's still a few minor things that have to be addressed, I'd say by the 29th of March would probably be the earliest date that we could come back and have things ready. I don't think the 22nd would be feasible for a number of different reasons, but if, with the work that's been done up to this point, and, whether it's the administrators, whether it's the custodians, I think the buildings would be ready to open on the 29th if that was the date that was.
Okay, thank you.
Looked at.
That's all I have for now, but I reserve the right to speak ad nauseum at a later time.
Thank you, Mr. Greer. Ms. Boyd, go ahead.
Thank you. I too would like to thank everybody who has weighed in either tonight or through letters or phone calls over the past couple of weeks. It's been it's been hard, and I think one of the things that makes this such a challenging decision is the fact that there are so many competing concerns, I would say, in some ways. And I'm not saying that to sort of pit one group against another by any means, but I think what I mean by that is everything really has been a valid concern. And it's been really difficult then to think about, concerns that staff may have about, needing to quarantine or increase numbers of kids who are quarantining, but balancing that at the same time with concerns of parents, who have teenagers who are struggling to learn remotely or are struggling with the isolation of being at home and not being connected to their peers from the other cohort. And so, I think it's just been challenging, to be honest. And I also recognize, I think like many people, that concurrent learning is not ideal. I think everyone can agree that in-person instruction is going to be the most effective. And I think there's no substitute for that, for the in-person instruction. So my goal is to really get to a place where if we can provide in-person instruction and be in accordance with the state and the CDC guidelines, I think that's what we need to be looking at. And I think at the same time, we do need to be mindful of doing that as smoothly as possible. I guess my only question for the superintendent is, I have heard the concerns about increased, likelihood or possibility of having more staff or students have to quarantine if we bring back more kids into the classroom and they're at a closer distance. Can you, just for the sake of kind of understanding what the scope of that is, can you tell us do you know how many kids or students or teachers are quarantining currently?
Yeah, again, thanks to Ms. Landry, our nurse director. She informs me, keeps tabs on a weekly basis, how many are being quarantined or isolated. And I believe the number right now, I don't have it in front of me, I think it was 39 for this past week are under quarantine. I think it was 5 educators and 34 students. And I believe there was a total of 7 that were currently in isolation due to being a positive. We had our lowest positive number of cases since November 20th last week, which was great. And right now we have 3 positive cases so far for this week. So
Okay.
that's where. So those numbers have come down. But obviously, if there is any changes, then we'll have to pivot. But right now we're going in a good direction.
Okay, just one quick follow-up question. Do you feel confident that you'd be able to meet any sort of staff coverage needs if there is an increase in number of students who need to quarantine?
I mean, if the students have to quarantine, I mean, I think we would.
And teachers.
And if the teachers quarantining, it would be a challenge. It's been a challenge all year. And like I said before, we've had some folks who have had to cover during the prep time. And again, if a teacher or an aide covers, then they're compensated for that extra time. But it's a challenge, and I think if teachers have to quarantine as a close contact, again, what they've been doing for the most part has been zooming into the classroom and continuing to teach from that standpoint, which has been great.
Okay. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Boyd. Ms. Brady.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I was asking you to unmute, I think.
Oh, okay, all right.
You should be getting a thing to click on. There you go.
You good?
Yep.
Okay, so as far as pre-screening, we ask parents I just want to be clear.
Yeah.
We ask parents to pre-screen their children before they send them to school, correct?
That's been that was in the opening plan back in July and August. And while we do not have a formal monitor that, checks the temperature and those types of things, the expectation is that every parent and every staff member has done that self evaluation of those symptoms. And if they have any of them, we urge them to stay home.
Right, okay, and that information is still going out weekly in newsletters, and that information is there, so parents have access to and staff members as well.
Yep.
Yes, okay. So just so everyone understands kind of what my perspective is up to this point is that after talking with a lot of educators and the leadership team, it seems that one of the biggest issues was the consistent transition, how it's like one change after another, and that, causes stress in everybody's lives, as we all know. I go this list as the final transition, and I want to be sure that if we do make a decision, that this will be carried over until the end of the year. There's not going to be another transition after this choice.
Not that I'm aware of, unless the state tells us that we have to do something different, but right now.
Okay, in that case.
And to be honest with you, I mean.
Push back on that though. I'm kind of.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they have not given us a date, any type of projection yet for high school, although they have set the expectation for middle school, but they haven't set that. So, but I'm not foreseeing them doing anything drastically different than what is in place now.
So, and then the other thing that I'm realizing is that our staff had the opportunity to be vaccinated on the 11th and the 12th, and maybe some on the 13th. So even if we had returned April 5th, they wouldn't be that 2 weeks out of that fully vaccinated.
No, they would have had anyone that was vaccinated for the first time this past Thursday or Friday. That it would be April 1st and April 2nd would be the second time.
What I'm saying is to have the full
Yes.
protection of the vaccine. April 5th wouldn't even be that full protection date.
I mean,
Okay.
going by the metric that they DPH has. Again, I don't want to portray myself as a medical expert. Yeah. Yes. I would agree with you.
So, I agree with Bridget that the entire time there's been competing concerns, and it's been really hard, to decide what's the right thing to do. And I think that the right choice for all of us, again, I've said this a million times, everyone's probably sick of listening to me, but the right choice for everyone is.
Nobody can't hear you.
Oh, seriously? Yeah, I'm kidding. I can sit there.
I can hear you better without this one.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, too much on that. Sure.
Just do that all again.
All right.
You sounded great.
I promise.
Okay. Okay.
All right. I need a new computer. Can everyone hear me now? Yes? No, I can't see anybody, so I don't know. Yes? Okay. So does anyone want to tell me what the last thing they heard me say was? I'm sorry. This is embarrassing. Okay.
Okay.
So did I cut out in the middle? Is that what happened?
You were baffled. Like
The whole time? Oh, okay. I'm not repeating myself. But that was really great too. Sorry about that. So just to recap for people that didn't hear me, I had asked the first question about pre-screening. I asked Mr. Granatino if the information was still sent home to parents and staff about pre-screening your children before they come to school, and staff pre-screening themselves before they come into work. And the answer was yes, right? Yes. Okay. Okay. Yes. I had mentioned that teachers were vaccinated on the 11th, 12th, and some on the 13th. And I had stated that on April 5th, they still wouldn't be to that threshold of the 2 weeks after the second vaccination. So even if they came back on April 5th, they wouldn't be fully vaccinated. And then I had said that I agree with Bridget when she discussed the competing concerns, that this has been really hard for us, and that, that a perfect situation looks different for everyone. And it's not, some scenarios are ideal for others and not ideal for the rest. I will say that I know that a lot of our teachers have chosen to volunteer at the fairgrounds, and they have the ability to be vaccinated. And I know that some of them gave up their time on Saturdays, and they are already fully vaccinated. So I know that it's not all of the teachers that aren't fully vaccinated. And I know that because I also volunteer my time to work there. I know this isn't easy, but I want to see everybody back in school, and I think that it's time. I want to thank everyone for giving us their opinions on this. And, I apologize if you're not excited about what we decide. And I don't even know how it's going to go. But I'm wondering if we're prepared to make a motion. Can I make a motion?
So, Ms. Bray, thank you. You can make a motion. A motion would have to include a date, no sooner than a certain date, and would have to also include pending negotiations.
Okay.
And after that point, what I would do is open it up to the committee again if they have anything else to add
Okay.
before we deliberate on that.
Okay. So I'd like to make a motion for all students in cohort A and B to return to fully in-person instruction as proposed no earlier than March 29th, 2021, pending negotiations.
No earlier, no later.
No earlier.
Earlier.
No earlier.
Okay, so pending negotiations, no earlier than March 29th
Correct.
is the motion. Okay. We'll turn it on over now to the committee for discussion.
You want to keep it?
Okay, sure.
You have a second? You have a
Yes, thank you, Mr. Greer. Is there a second?
Bill seconded.
Second for Mr. Greer. Discussion? Look to the committee for any discussion on the date before we move on to a vote.
Hello again.
Go ahead, Ms. Campbell.
Just to kind of repeat my thought from earlier, now that we have a date on the table, we all want to see our students back in school. I don't want to speak for you guys, but I think I can in that regard. And we all know that in-person instruction is the absolute best way for our kids to learn. That being said, I do feel that coming in before April 5th is potentially disruptive to our staff, disruptive to our students. I'd like to see them be able to wrap up the third term and start fresh with the new term on April 5th in school.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Anything else from the committee before I take my own privilege to speak a little bit? No. Okay. So I appreciate the discussion from the committee. I appreciate everybody's thoughts, and I appreciate the work that has gone into this. And I appreciate the comments from the public as well. I think it's evident that people in Marshfield are very passionate about public education, which I think is why we all ran for this in the first place. So I think even out of a stressful and tough situation, we can take away a positive that people are engaged with the process, and people want to make sure that we're doing what's best for our students and for our Marshfield Public Schools community. I think in the last year, and it's been just over a year since we had a school committee meeting when everything was starting to blow up with COVID-19. In just the last year alone, I think I've learned the most about perspective. And I think Ms. Brait hit on it perfectly earlier. This is no easy decision can be made when it comes to an issue like this, because everybody comes at it with a different perspective. And I want to make sure to stress to folks that this board has had the unenviable task to take into account the perspective of students, of teachers, of parents, of community members, of administrators, of stakeholders all across this town, while also juggling the guidelines, requirements by the state, the recommendations from all sorts of different medical groups, the recommendations of the CDC, the recommendations coming down from the Department of Public Health in Massachusetts. It has been quite an experience, and this committee, I think, has done a very good job in juggling all of that. This is a tough decision. I think as somebody who's been on this committee for 6 years, what I look at is I try and take a step back and I look at weighing the different factors. Obviously, for me, I've been very clear that first and foremost, health and safety of our students, our staff, and their families is number one. And to that, we look at numerous studies that have been done to suggest that it is safe to be back in school. That there's all sorts of different groups from the CDC coming down just recently saying 3 feet is fine in public schools, a 3 feet distance. As long as we're maintaining that, I certainly feel comfortable going back, and I believe the rest of this committee feels the same way. We've also had the chance to look at our own data. We take a look at the fact that I believe, Mr. Granatino, correct me if I'm wrong, only 3 cases have been spread and traced back to Marshfield Public Schools, and maybe a couple more following that last presentation.
Right.
But it's still a very, almost, it's in the single digits, I believe. And even now, our numbers district-wide are going down. And we look at the fact that our students at the elementary level have been back full-time now for 3 weeks. And those numbers of cases have gone down significantly. That goes to show that the distancing protocols that we have in place, especially wearing your mask, washing your hands, works. As long as we're maintaining that 6-foot distance for teachers, I feel comfortable. And I also know too, that after the first dose of the vaccine, teachers are, or anybody who gets the vaccine, has a certain level of protection against the virus, and the second dose is to extend that. So that's what I look at from health and safety. From logistics, I trust Mr. Granatino. I trust our administrators. I trust teachers. I trust those folks to get that done. Then it's all about best instructional practices. And I don't think any of us are sitting here today saying that the hybrid model is a better model than full in-person instruction for all of our students. So the final holdup for me and for this board would be the date. And what I appreciate from Ms. Brait's motion is the fact that it is worded in a way that would allow us to return no earlier than the 29th and still allow us to enter into negotiations with the union. So that, I believe, is a good course of action. I do want to say a couple quick things about the teachers. I think what's bothered me most about this pandemic is that you watch social media, you watch the forums, and you just hear what folks say about teachers. At the very beginning of this, they had the right idea. Teachers were heroes. Teachers were people who were making huge changes on the fly to make sure that they were serving their students. That hasn't changed. For some reason, the perspective has on the part of many people in the community. And I want to say to those folks who might criticize the teachers or think that this is a battle between Marshfield Public Schools, the school committee, and the teachers union, that could not be further from the truth. The teachers have made unbelievable sacrifices for our students, for their families, and for their health and safety. And every single decision that we've made factors in our teachers to a great extent. And we've clearly heard from some teachers tonight in public comment, and I just want to make that clear, that this committee does value our educators, appreciates everything they've done. At the end of the day, we have to vote what we believe is best for our kids. Is there a perfect date that will work beyond all others? No. But the way that this motion is worded does allow us to come back, and I appreciate that wording, so I would be supportive of that motion. So that is what I have to say, and if there's anything else to be added from members of the committee, I would recognize you now. If not, I will call for a vote. So the motion has been made by Ms. Brait to return to full in-person instruction no sooner than Monday, March 29th, 2021, pending negotiations. Second has been made by Mr. Greer. Yes, Ms. Boyd.
I do, whoops, can you hear me?
Yes.
I do have a question relative to the motion and relative to communication then with families about what a date could be. Like, you know, so if the motion is to be no earlier than the 29th, I'm not sure that provides clarity yet for parents, and it might be because it's pending negotiations as well. But I think I just worry a little bit about clarity of what a date would end up being.
Mm-hmm. So do you have an amendment to the motion, or?
I don't know what to do.
Yeah, I don't know what the return on the 29th. I was going to ask the same question.
I turn to you, Mr. Granatino.
Well, I mean, I think that the motion is the 29th, no earlier than, so it wouldn't be, I'm sorry. Hold on.
No, so that means we're returning on the 29th.
Right.
I'm just asking a question.
Yes. I mean, from breaking the end of the motion would call for, school to return to full in person instruction at the secondary level by the 29th. No, earlier than the 29th, but on the 20th. No, so it's not going to be the 28th, the 27th, the 26th, anytime sooner. But the 29th is the date, the earliest we can return.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments on the motion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand, saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstaining? That's a 4-1-0. Thank you very much, folks. Much appreciated, and appreciate everybody's understanding. Again, it's all about the students at the end of the day. So we appreciate everybody's active engagement in the process. We'll go now to the resolution that we have on MCAS. I'm going to turn it on over to you, Mr. Granatino, for an explanation of that.
Well, there had been a resolution brought forward a few meetings back. Got waylaid a little bit on the process. That was mirrored what the MASC, the Association of School Committee Members, had brought forth at their fall gathering in conjunction with the MASS, the Superintendent's Association. There had been a first read, and then there had been some tweaks made to this resolution. So if you want, it'd probably be best to read it through, because it's a little different than the original one. Had the same intent and same spirit, but I think the previous resolution was one that was tied more to a global approach about testing. I think this is more, laser focused on the testing that's going on here in Massachusetts and how it impacts us here in Marshfield, which I think is probably a good thing. And there's a few folks that had offered some edits, and we can read it here, and then you folks can discuss as you see fit. So it says, whereas the Marshfield School Committee recognizes that COVID-19 has presented significant challenges for our community during 2020-2021 school year, and commends our students, families, educators, and staff for their unwavering resilience and commitment. And whereas the students of Marshfield and across the Commonwealth have missed valuable face-to-face instructional opportunities with their teachers, and would benefit from focusing on increased instructional opportunities as well as social and emotional support. And whereas Marshfield Public Schools and districts across the Commonwealth have their own assessments and diagnostic tools to measure student proficiency and to develop comprehensive plans to support students in need of additional help in mastering skills and content. And whereas the Commonwealth has already postponed MCAS until later this spring and will not be holding school districts accountable for results. And whereas the Marshfield School Committee believes that in-person instruction during the school year would be better spent on providing enriching learning opportunities and ensuring social and emotional well-being of our students, now be it resolved that the Marshfield School Committee urges the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to seek a waiver from the United States Department of Education to waive standardized testing for the 2020-2021 school year to maximize in-person instruction for the remainder of this school year.
Thank you very much, Mr. Granatino. Any comments? I know, Ms. Boyd, this has been something that you've been working on as well, so why don't you go ahead?
Sure, thank you. And I thank you, Superintendent Granatino, for reading that. I think what this does, I do agree that we need to be thinking about how we can best assess our kids and assess, what they've been learning and how much they've mastered for this year. And in conversations that I've had with teachers and with administrators, I'm confident that we have these assessment tools in place in Marshfield for the teachers to be able to do that with the students that they know well, and to be able to provide support to those students. And so I do not think MCAS is necessary, for that exercise. And I think our teachers who know our students best can do that work as well. I think the other thing to note is that this, sort of advocating to the state to suspend MCAS for this year it's not really actually in the state's hands right now. The state needs to ask for a waiver from the Department of Education, the U.S. Department of Education. So I just wanted to make people aware of that, because I do think many people think that we can still sort of lobby the state for these changes, and it just needs to get kicked up to a higher level. Thank you.
I want to thank Ms. Boyd, because she did our talked a lot about the impact that the testing does have, on the time and learning here, in the the short period that we have left in the school year to have more of this testing taking up. I mean, we're talking weeks, even though it's been truncated and shortened. It's still a task. We spent how much time? 20 minutes today in our leadership meeting just talking about, the impact on this for the elementary schools with our pre-K to 5 leadership team. You're also looking at the impact that it has on our students who are learning remotely and the challenges that come with that. I know a lot of the discussion also has been occurring around the state where, the resources that are being spent on MCAS, whether it's local resources or state resources, if there weren't these exams. And to your point about trying to find the gaps that may exist from the challenges of this kind of year, if we were to look for summer programming above and beyond our traditional extended school year, those resources would be better suited in funding those types of programs. So I concur with you, and I know there's a number of other districts that have been going down this path for a while now.
Great, thank you. Any other questions, comments? Yes, Ms. Campbell.
Just a comment to kind of piggyback on what Ms. Brait said. I think she hit the nail on the head where, MCAS is only one data point that we have for our students. And there are so many other ways that I know our teachers are able to track what our students are learning this year. And just a second, again, what Mr. Granatino was saying, if you've ever worked in a school building, to see the amount of scheduling and time that gets spent on MCAS, I think all of us would probably agree that we would much rather see that time spent on actual instruction versus taking hours and hours to take a standardized test. So that's all.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments?
No, I just want to make a motion.
Sure, Mr. Rieger, right in.
Motion to approve the MCAS resolution.
Okay, motion's been made by Mr. Greer. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Ms. Campbell. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstaining? That's a 5-0-0. Thank you very much, Mr. Granatino. Thank you very much, Ms. Boyd, as well, for your work on that. Much appreciated. We will circle back around now to informational. So I recognize you, Mr. Granatino, if you have anything else to add, and then we'll go through the rest of our administrators.
Actually, this is going to be one of the first times you'll ever hear me say that. I don't have comments right now. We'll be back next week at a regular meeting, and I will have plenty to talk about then. But by the time the others speak, I had not planned them since this was a special meeting on this one topic, or predominantly on this one topic. So I figured that focus should be there.
Awesome. Thank you very much, sir. Dr. Martin.
I think Mr. Granatino isn't talking because we met for 3.5 hours today. His voice is probably gone. I have nothing tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Miller?
Ms. Scalaro?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I went out of order. Ms. Scalaro, go right ahead.
I do not have any specific updates this evening either.
All right, 3 for 3. Mr. Miller.
Well, here we go. I do have an update. I just wanted to briefly give the committee an update on the American Rescue Plan and how it looks like it's going to impact Marshfield. The act that was passed last week, the $1.9 trillion total, is going to provide about $129 billion to education, and which comes out to about $125 billion for K through 12 education. Of that 125, that 125 is estimated about 2.2 times the ESSER 2 grant that we just received. So 123 billion versus 54.3 billion previously, which means that the 1.25 that we just received in ESSER 2 could be up to 2.75 million through the American Rescue Plan. So again, this grant can be phased in over a 3-year period. This one's more likely going to be a 2-year period for fiscal 22 and fiscal 23. There's going to be, from what bits and pieces are coming out right now, the only thing that's been discussed that looks like it's going to definitely be part of that funding would be the earmarking of $1 out of every 5 for learning recovery programs. So what learning recovery programs is going to entail. I'm sure we'll get further information, but that one out of that 20% is $550,000 right there in and of itself. So again, this is now our third go round through the CARES rescue. And again, so it right now looks like we could be in line for about $2.75 million in funding. So, which will help us tremendously over the next 2 fiscal years. That's it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Miller. Much appreciated. Much appreciated.
I don't
believe there are any subcommittee report time, but are there?
I don't believe our student representatives.
I don't believe our student representatives are on, but if they are, could you raise your hand using the raise hand feature? And I'll recognize you for an update.
Okay, I don't believe they are on either.
Okay. I
Last
don't believe
order
they
of
are
business
on
for
either.
tonight is the meeting minutes.
Last order of business for the night is the meeting minutes from
Please
last
pull
week.
up your minutes
If you
from
could please
tonight.
pull up your minutes from the 9th. The chair will accept a motion once you have had a chance to read this. The motion.
Yeah, motion to approve the meeting minutes from 9 March 2021.
A motion made by Mr. Greer. Is there a second? Second from Ms. Boyd. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand, saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstaining? That's a 5-0-0, Ms. Pazerski. Okay, folks, we will be back at it again next week for our regularly scheduled meeting on the 23rd. Mrs. Pazerski, if you could please call a roll for a motion to adjourn that the chair will now entertain. So moved from Ms. Campbell. Is there a second? Second from Mr. Greer. Go ahead, Ms. Pazerski.
Ms. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Greer?
Yes.
Mr. Costello?
Yes.
Ms. Boyd?
Yes.
Mrs. Brady? Yes.
Thank you very much, folks.
Thank you.